Gary from Nerdrotic has returned to torture us with his usual conspiracy nonsense, laced with his usual mix of racism, sexism, being a generous person. He is right, there are some alarming signs of what is occurring with the MCU, and I'm speaking from someone generally not supportive of the MCU, mostly on aesthetic grounds that they're violating the comic book canon. They're just not very interesting films unto themselves, but here and there they do some good stuff. And when they do bad stuff, of course, it's fine to call it out. And if it is politically very problematic, it's also fine. Very deceptive look at what is occurring. I think we all know what the basic charge is that too much focus or attention is now given to the female protagonists, and somehow all the true fans who know the comics should really rally around him. But if you really do know the comic books, this isn't really adding up. But let's hear him speak and then go through a lot of these very, very deceptive charges.
But you nearly took down the organization that claims to govern the order of time. You did it on your own. You had rings around them. You're amazing.
The MCU character requires constant affirmation.
I like this one.
Every day more people love you. You'll find refuge wherever you go.
I didn't think there could be another Captain America until I met you.
I know what you did. You're a damn predator. All right, just get the hell out of here. I got a goddamn campaign.
Along with the constant denigration of the male character.
Touch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a narcissist.
The titular male character.
Listen to your mom. She knows better.
Twisted morality like with WandaVision.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
It wouldn't change how they see me.
Just let us die.
Black Widow.
We stole the key to unlocking free will.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
She's just a kid. You're seeing something in her that isn't there.
There's still people in there.
This is the only language these people understand.
I agree with your fight.
And Captain Marvel.
Here's a proposition for you. You're gonna give me your jacket, your helmet, and your motorcycle, and in return, I'm gonna let you keep your hand.
Take it.
Young girls inexplicably starting massive criminal organizations. Bad dads, girl bosses, retcons, and of course, the bait and switch, which brought us female Loki, female Hawkeye, and female Thor.
Well, where to even begin? He's mixing a lot of things together. One, that women generally are doing these very morally questionable things. But to give him credit, he admits with Captain Marvel, he's simply lying because that's a deleted scene. Yeah, if you saw the theatrical release, you didn't see that. I don't think Captain Marvel was that good a film. It's not terrible, but it's very, very mediocre. Nevertheless, I don't think you can say she did that many questionable things in the theatrical release. And even the things she's doing there, again, because he's a little stupid, or he's taking too many drugs again, that's basically, and again, I don't think it's successful, but it's a very strained homage to Terminator 2. Because in Terminator 2, Arnold does something very, very similar. He just doesn't know film history very well. And again, remember, this is supposed to be a 1990s homage. Some of that is not really political. It's just tip of the hat to the films and music of that era. As for these other things, well, again, correct me if I'm not wrong, but the Wasp doesn't really do that much that is, quote, questionable. They also didn't do any bait and switch because Ant-Man, good or bad, was one of the central heroes of Endgame. And I know this because Gary told me this is true. The Wasp is not the central focus in Endgame. She only comes in for a cameo at the end. And as far as we can see, Scott is still heterosexual. They haven't really changed him. He is a hero. He does heroic things. In fact, I thought he was actually one of the better parts of Endgame. So I actually agree with Garrett there. I thought actually the Ant-Man performance was pretty well done. As for these other cases, yeah, it's a little questionable. I mean, what wrong thing did Jane Foster do? Now, I still think it's wrong that they're going to give her the hammer because she didn't really do anything to earn it, but she didn't do anything evil, as far as I know. Seems a little weird. So he's skewing the case just by concentrating on. Then there's the Eternals, where by definition, female women were doing good. They were helping humanity all throughout. They were technically serving the Celestials, who planned to destroy the Earth, but then they turned against them. Not clear what he's saying. And in terms of the moral lesson, those who did something wrong did pay for it. Not clear what he's saying. Now, is he saying something generally true? Yes, it is true that there's a much larger focus now on the non-white performers as well as the female performers. But if you know the comics, this is not going against the canon. I mean, whatever you think about Loki as a series, Loki is a shapeshifter. So turning him into this or that is canonical. It is true the older Loki was portrayed more consistently as a heterosexual, but he's a trickster, and again, he is a shapeshifter, so it's not really violating the canon. You can still argue it's not a good idea, but it's not violating the canon. Also, even female Thor, this was an idea they explored as early as 1978. That's right, 1978. They had this idea. He's just lying. He's just lying about the comic book history. The female characters were actually the very central focus in the comics in the 70s and the 80s. This is not something we can argue about. This is just true. In an X-Men Thor story, Storm wielded the hammer. It's being very, very deceptive that this is all brand new or this is part of some weird recent political agenda. You may argue it's a political agenda, but there's nothing recent about it. In fact, it's the other way around. The films are actually very, very late in adopting what the comic books did just decades ago. So he's really, really being deceptive about what happened in the Marvel comic. You could still argue these are not good ideas, but to say they're contradicting the vision of Stan Lee, I don't know about that. He's also misframing what happened. For instance, he has a shot of Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman wasn't created for feminist reasons. It was purely out of money. They didn't want the trademark of Spider-Man to be tampered with, so they literally created Spider-Woman so DC Comics couldn't do it.
Another type of knockoff character is when a publisher creates a gender-swapped version, presumably to prevent someone else from beating them to that idea. Marvel created both She-Hulk and Spider-Woman to make sure that they had the rights to those characters. In a 1978 interview with the Comics Journal, Stan Lee admitted this was their intention.
Again, he's just misrepresenting the history or even the motivation of why Marvel Comics did what they did. Yes, they were skewing to a more female feminist audience. That is true. That's how they were represented. But a lot of this is also just financial. These female characters were very popular. They were monetizing the popularity, and that has been proven true. Captain Marvel did make $1 billion. He keeps having this conspiracy theory it didn't, but it did. So, again, in some cases, they are just following the money. May not like that, but they are. And again, it's just not being reflected in the actual movies. I mean, again, whatever you think about No Way Home, Zendaya and Tom Holland are still a couple in the film. They're portrayed as a heterosexual couple. So is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Vision and Scarlet, and as far as we can see, probably with Thor and Jane. So, again, he is correct some alarming tendencies, but overall, he's just being very, very deceptive about what happened in the comics, what is occurring in the movies, and what is going on generally.